I'm not entirely sure why, but the Buffalo Bills are one of my favorite franchises in the NFL. Bills Mafia is easily one of the most passionate fan bases in football, a tight-knit community that defends their own and is undyingly loyal to the home team. And while you might attribute that pride to the fact that Buffalo is one of the NFL's smaller markets, I've personally got another theory. Because you know what brings communities even closer together than a shared love of diving through flaming tables? Tragedy.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
You see, to be a Bills fan requires accepting that your team is openly maligned by the football gods. But in spite of that fact, thousands will still show up in Arctic temperatures every season to cheer them on regardless. Sometimes in ways that only Bills fans know how to. Bills Mafia's greatest moments aside, though, the definitive example of this loyalty can be found when you look at the Buffalo teams of the 1990s, who took the league by storm and became the only team in NFL history to go to 4 consecutive Super Bowls, a feat that not even the perfect Dolphins or Brady's Patriots could achieve. There's one tiny difference, though. The Bills lost every single one of those 4 Super Bowls, reaching the top of the mountain every season just to slide all the way back down in a matter of a couple hours. It's truly an accomplishment that's impressiveness can only be matched in scale by how devastatingly sad it is. But before we unpack the story of those teams and how their legacy has evolved and looking back at them now, I'd like to take a quick second to thank this week's sponsor over at Roman for helping me to independently make videos just like this one. As seemingly life-altering as football games can be sometimes, there's ultimately nothing more important than your health. For many guys out there, uncomfortable issues like erectile dysfunction or hair loss might seem easier to sweep under the rug than deal with, and that's where Roman comes in. They're straightforward and discreet in connecting you with a healthcare professional for a free online evaluation. That way, right from the comfort of your own home, you can decide what's right for you. If medicine ends up being that answer, it'll be shipped to your doorstep in 2 days free of charge. Boom, case closed. So if you're interested in getting started, go to getroman.com/STE to get a free online visit, $15 off your first order of ED treatment, and free 2-day shipping. Again, that's getroman.com/STE for $15 off your first order. So a huge thank you to Roman, and now let's travel to the NFL's Great White North. Despite a rich history of AFL success and an era featuring one of the best running backs to ever touch a football, the Buffalo Bills of the late 1980s found themselves caught in a difficult transition period. Even their quarterback of the future, Jim Kelly, had only recently returned to the team after first bailing on them for the USFL when he was drafted.
We can go on days and days talk about why I picked USFL or the NFL. Would you rather be in Houston or Buffalo? I'll stop there.
So Buffalo the city and Buffalo the team both weren't seen as a powerhouse in any respect, but by 1989 they had assembled a talented young core with up-and-coming names like Andre Reed, Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, and the aforementioned Kelly all entering the prime of their careers. However, with tons of hype and no clear leader, the Bills spent the '89 season in one locker room feud after another, blame flying in all directions, and scripted apologies only reaffirming that this young, bickering Bills team, as it was dubbed by the media, had a long way to go. 9-7 was a definite underachievement for a team that turned itself from contender into soap opera, but even amidst that chaos, Buffalo uncovered a path to future success late in the year by experimenting with the innovative no-huddle offense. At that time, pace of play in the NFL was significantly slower than it is today, with time between snaps allowing defensive adjustments and substitutions at, let's say, a comfortable rate. But as Jim Kelly began to come into his own as quarterback, already revered for how quickly he could process the field in front of him, and other talent at skill positions that would keep defenses guessing, tempo became the weapon of choice for the Bills' offense. In the 1990 season, the newly minted K-Gun offense would eviscerate defenses all across the league en route to a 13-3 record. And while internal feuds and petty rants defined the previous year's team, surprise surprise, winning cured all of that. 428 points on offense, a Defensive Player of the Year nod for Bruce Smith anchoring the defense, and complete playoff domination, with wins of 44-34 and 51-3 in the AFC Championship. Those performances were starting to make the word juggernaut feel like an understatement to describe this Bills team, and they marched into Super Bowl 25 against the Giants as 6.5-point favorites. But for as much confidence as Buffalo was able to enter that title game with, they were about to endure an experience that would become all too common for Super Bowl hopefuls in the decades to come. Roaming the opposite sideline were two coaches that would go down in NFL history: Bill Parcells and a young but seasoned defensive coordinator by the name of Bill Belichick, who had just so happened to tailor one of the most brilliant defensive plans in Super Bowl history. The Bills came in with the most high-powered passing attack in the league, predicated on keeping defenses constantly backpedaling as they rushed from one first down to the next. It had gassed teams all throughout the year and playoffs in a way that made hardened professionals look like doughy JV backups. So, knowing that, despite the fact the Bills boasted a tailback in Thurman Thomas that trailed only Barry effing Sanders in yardage that year, Bill Belichick's defense dared the team to run, playing only 2 down linemen early and selling out to force the Bills out of their comfort zone. When you look today at the most explosive offenses in the NFL, the defensive performances that make them look mortal nearly always come in tandem with an offensive plan to keep the ball out of the other team's hands at any cost. But in that 1991 Super Bowl against what was essentially a modern offense, the Giants' defense executed that blueprint to perfection, allowing their time of possession to total 40 minutes and 33 seconds in a 60-minute game. To this day, that's still a Super Bowl record. But even considering all of that, the Bills proved to be an unstoppable force up against an immovable object, and after going down 20-19 with just 2 minutes and 16 seconds to play, Jim Kelly and Buffalo would still drive 61 yards to the Giants' 29-yard line, setting up kicker Scott Norwood for a game-winning 47-yard field goal.
Lingner will snap it right, will hold it. Norwood will kick it from the right hash mark with 8 seconds left, and the Giants leading Buffalo 20-19. It's a 47-yard kick for the Bills. There's a snap. There's a kick. It is up. It is no good. Norwood missed. 4 seconds left. The Giants have won Super Bowl 25.
I don't care who you are. That close of a loss will tear away at the soul of grown men. And Scott Norwood's post-game presser to this day goes down as one of the most gut-wrenching media moments you will look at. But ultimately, the entire team faced the music in a way that showed heart, and the city of Buffalo welcomed them back home like they'd watch that kick sail through the uprights regardless. So with that kind of support, it was immediately back to work to make that dream a reality. 1991 was a revenge tour for a team that had just led the NFL in scoring, and running back Thurman Thomas steamrolled defense after defense to the tune of over 2,000 yards from scrimmage and an NFL MVP. The Bills went 13-3 again that year, rolling through the playoffs determined to avenge the heartbreak they experienced a year prior. However, waiting for them in the Super Bowl was a team that, in hindsight, was probably one of the absolute best in league history. The 1991 Washington Redacted are a team that is seldom mentioned with the clear-cut and flashy names that come to mind with the greats. But that year, Washington was 14-2, with the top scoring offense in the league and the second best scoring defense to match. So once again playing one of the NFL's best defensive units, the Bills needed to execute their brand of football in a way they weren't able to the year prior. But despite the focus they possessed all season long, it simply didn't happen. Buffalo's first drive offers probably the best summary for this bizarro meltdown, as MVP running back Thurman Thomas missed the entire first 2 plays because he lost his helmet somewhere on the sidelines. From there, a whopping 5 turnovers and countless simple mistakes from Buffalo blew the game wide open, and in the blink of an eye, the Bills had just lost their second Super Bowl in a row, 37-24. Now, going to back-to-back Super Bowls was and still is a rarity for teams, but the football media sphere was able to comfortably write off Buffalo after that decisive defeat against Washington. The Bills had their shot, and their comeback was a fun narrative until it just wasn't. But the stakes weren't lowered inside the building. Noise or obstacles were not going to lower their aspirations. However, even the Bills' staunchest supporters were forced to admit it appeared their window had been slammed shut on them in the final game of the regular season, when their star quarterback Jim Kelly went down with a knee injury just a week prior to the team's wildcard matchup with the Houston Oilers. That left backup quarterback Frank Reich to prop up any hope of a miracle run back to the Super Bowl. After one half of their playoff game, though, that strand of hope had evaporated. Just over a minute into the third quarter, Frank Reich threw a pick six to allow the Oilers to go up a staggering 35-3. And as it felt like their playoff hopes were gutted, Bills fans bled out of their home stadium in Orchard Park. But in a game that came to embody everything that made those Bills teams a contender year after year, they wiped the blood off their chin and got right the hell back up.
Right to throw. Down the side. All alone. BB scores. First down at the 26. Right, nice touch. Has another man open. Backpedaling into the end zone is Andre Reed. For it at 4th and 5. Into the end zone. Has a man. Touchdown. Right to throw. End zone. Touchdown. It's a tail. Moon needs 3 yards. Has the time. Throws. It is intercepted. Buffalo has the ball. It is right down the middle.
It was the single greatest comeback in NFL history, and it sent a resounding message back through the league that even after being kicked down over and over, Buffalo could never be fully counted out. Despite the willingness of the nation to remove the Bills from contention, just like that, Buffalo was back in the Super Bowl. This time, they met Jerry Jones's Cowboys, who boasted the NFL's #1 ranked defense and the triplets on offense, 3 future Hall of Famers in Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. The narrative surrounding the Bills was no longer one of redemption or their unlikely run back to glory. Instead, Buffalo was asked one question over and over again leading up to game day. What if you lose? When Sunday eventually arrived, despite everything the team had been through to earn another spot under football's brightest lights, the Bills just went dark again. Jim Kelly went down with yet another injury early in the game, and though Reich had played hero against the Oilers, the Cowboys weren't about to take their foot off the gas. In all, it was a 52-17 thrashing with an NFL record 9 turnovers committed by Buffalo. After a storybook season, it was an embarrassment in every aspect of the word, with the only bright spot at all for the team coming from Don Beebe when he sprinted the distance of the field to chase down Leon Lett and punch the ball out even though the game was already well out of reach. Because despite the fact the Bills were completely overmatched that night, that one single play served as a reminder of why they were there in the first place. After 3 straight losses in front of the entire nation, though, naturally, the Bills were a laughingstock.
I'm working on next month's Oscar nominations. Any preference?
I couldn't care less. What I don't want to see is the Bills winning a Super Bowl. As long as I'm alive, that doesn't happen.
Could be tough, sir. Buffalo wants it bad.
So did the Soviets in '80.
The doubt that surrounded the team was more intense than ever, and age was beginning to wear down even their most dominant players following 3 straight full seasons and postseasons that all ended in bitter defeat. But the Bills' culture of focus and pride had thrived in being written off before, and with the city of Buffalo still fully behind them, they were ready to do it again. Like clockwork, a team that was supposed to disappear entirely was again running the table in the AFC East, with a 12-4 record and a defense that again boasted Bruce Smith as Defensive Player of the Year. The Bills were doing it again, whether the world wanted them to or not, and the chant "piss 'em off" and "go for 4" was added to the vocabulary of every man, woman, and child in the Buffalo area. The Bills clawed their way back to an unprecedented 4th Super Bowl, this time a rematch against the Dallas Cowboys, and not a single person outside the city of Buffalo was willing to give them a shot, with Dallas favored by 10.5 points. By halftime, though, the Bills looked like they might shock the world, taking a surprising 13-6 lead going into the locker room. But for a team that had only made it to the position they were in through incredible self-belief no team had ever shown before or really has shown since, they allowed themselves to be overtaken by doubt and instead anxiously waited for something to go wrong in the final opportunity to save their legacy. You can call it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or you can call it Bills football, But 45 seconds into the third quarter, Thurman Thomas would be stripped of the football, and from that point forward, the Cowboys would cement back-to-back Super Bowl wins, outscoring Buffalo 24-0 in the remaining 2 quarters, forever immortalizing the 3 words that will haunt Bills fans for the rest of their lives: 0 and 4. Losing 4 consecutive Super Bowls is a stain you cannot remove from how your team will be remembered, and, rightfully so. The Bills of the 1990s set a new standard for what vanishing in the biggest possible moments looks like, in a way that entirely erased any reputation as the dominant and revolutionary team they were. Rings are the only eternal achievement in pro football, and without one, even the absolute greatest seasons are just lost to a sea of hypotheticals. To me, that's the greatest tragedy about those Buffalo teams. Lose 1 Super Bowl, you're remembered as a successful group that just didn't have the juice to cross the finish line. But lose 4 Super Bowls in a row, and now you are synonymous with the word failure itself. The fact is, what the Bills accomplished is insane if you look beyond the surface. Losing a Super Bowl is grueling. Going the distance like that and then walking away empty-handed isn't something you just bounce back from. In fact, only 5 other teams have gone back to a Super Bowl after losing it in the entirety of NFL history. The Bills, they did it 3 times in a row. And while it's true that the NFC of that era ran the table, winning 13 Super Bowls from 1985 to 1997, the Bills' record against the NFC in games that weren't the Super Bowl was 14-2 during that 4-year span. And that includes wins against teams that they would later lose to in the Super Bowl that year, like when they beat the Giants in 1990 or beat the Cowboys in 1992. Buffalo wasn't just a team of scrubs that squeaked through a spineless conference year after year. They were dominating the NFL with an offense that pioneered concepts you see in the league today, along with one of the all-time great defensive ends anchoring the other side of the ball. In total, 8 players and coaches from those teams would be enshrined in the Football Hall of Fame. And while they might not have ever bested the iconic NFC powerhouses of the early 90s, I think the legacy of those Bills teams deserves not to be remembered as failures, but as one of the ideal models of what you do when you experience crushing defeats. Even on the biggest stages, there are times when you fail and times when you get hit in the mouth.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
Yeah, what he said. So, are those Bills champions? No. But their ability to take adversity on the chin and bounce back again allowed them to accomplish something that will likely never be done again in NFL history. And ultimately, I think that perseverance is what being a Bills fan is all about. When you're living through blizzards and crushing defeats on a regular basis, keeping your head up and just diving through a table is the only reasonable way to keep your sanity. I mean, following the conclusion of the Marv Levy and Bill Polian era, the people of Buffalo endured the horrific fall of a legend in O.J. Simpson, a playoff drought that spanned 17 bleak years, and watched the coach responsible for denying them their first Super Bowl go on to win 6 titles with a team in their division. And yet, somehow, they press on. Even though those 90s teams shattered fans' hearts over and over again, they're still beloved by fans as living legends for bringing Buffalo to every living room in America. And as bittersweet as those memories are, with every diehard supporter waiting anxiously for more than 2 decades since the team's last playoff win, I'd be willing to bet if you ask any one of them, they're ready to be heard again.